Before I hand over mic to Shastriji, I just wanted to quickly have a very quick introduction about him. Mr. Adarsh Shastriji is a management postgraduate, having worked extensively for over 26 years in business transformation, business strategy, business development, sales and marketing, change management in the electronics, telecom and retail industry, both in India and abroad. Some of his remarkable achievements have been that he led Apple's launch strategy in India, and he also contributed to Samsung's explosive growth and turnaround in India, and helped it becoming in one of the India's largest MNC and capturing the largest market share in the mobile business in 2011. He is also a founder member of the Indian Cellular and Electronics Association, and he's also on the board of various policy think tanks and government committees, including FICCI, CII, and SHM. Also, Mr. Adarsh Shastriji is involved in the startup ecosystem in India, whereby he advises business and entrepreneurs for the ideation strategy through incubation and hand-holding them across the business life cycle. He's also on the advisory board of Deloitte of India and helps them in the government and public policy arena. This was few of his industrial contributions, but on a social front as well, he has made some remarkable achievements. Adarshi is an educationist and is involved in various trusts and foundations named after his grandfather and India's second Prime Minister, Lal Bahadur Shastriji. The trust run multiple schools and polytechnics in rural India near Allahabad in Uttar Pradesh and near Indore in Madhya Pradesh, with key focus on ensuring value-based education and employability. He has played an instrumental role in the establishment of Lal Bahadur Shastri Research Center for Public Policy and Research. He has been recognized and awarded by many social groups in India for his contribution to providing education for the underprivileged sections of the society. He was conferred the prestigious 27th Maulana Muhammad Ali Jauhar National Award for Excellence in Social Work and Championing for Equal Rights for Women and Minorities in India in 2017. It is my absolute pleasure having Adarshi on stage to talk on India, UK business and role of professionals. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here today amongst all of you. And I would like to thank the Institute of Company Secretaries of India and Manish ji, my friend Suresh, and the entire team here for having invited me over on short notice. And of course, this entire event is focused on the kind of work and the role, I believe, extremely critical role in ethical governance that that company secretaries play in the quest of organizations growing large, growing fast, and being impatient. So I think the role of company secretaries is extremely important in ensuring that balance and ensuring that tightrope walk is held in balance across the growth phase and operation phase of many companies. Thank you once again for having me here. I am not, worthy of talking about company law and about company secretary because I do not have any such qualification. And I would like to seek your apology for not being able to talk on that. So I was asked by Preeti, what would I like to speak upon? So I said I will rather speak upon my own experiences and how and in what form I think they are relevant, in today's time and age. So thank you once again. I thought also, I know I'm the person standing between you and lunch. So I will not take much time. I'll try and wrap up in about 15 minutes. My journey has been extremely, convoluted and complicated in the sense that in spite of being from a political family and a political legacy, very early on in my life, I was asked this question, and I was born in India and I used to go to school in India. And I used to be asked this question, that what are you going to do after you finish school, or what are you going to do when you grow up? And I would tell friends and teachers and whoever else wanted to know or was interested that, well, I will find a job and, I will work and then try and build a career. And across the board, the question that used to come back to me in the Indian context used to be that, why would you want to work? Why would you want to seek employment? So I used to answer in all innocence that, well, that's the way it is. And how else do I make money? And how else do I earn? And how else do I grow? And then most of these friends and, in fact, teachers used to start looking amused and say, well, your grandfather was India's second prime minister. I'm sure you have enough money to just retire after you finish school. And this education is just a validation stamp. And it's then that I started realizing that the value associated with ethics and honesty is something which is not there in politics in India today. And in the last 30, 40 years, I would say, not just today. And that's when I realized that most people tend to have preconceived notions. And when I used to tell them, and that's why they used to be amused, because they would say that, we see no reason why you should work, and because in their context of understanding, people coming from political backgrounds and political families have it all laid out for them the day they are born, and life is set. So that was one of my first experiences in understanding that you have to make people understand and you have to step up and speak and in your actions about being honest and ethical, and how you can go and make sure that people understand that and disassociate yourself with the fact that this whole idea of being not honest in politics. And so that was there in my mind. The other big challenge I used to face was preconceived notions. So compared to my friends, I always used to have a challenge on both sides. So you'll wonder what both sides challenge was. So on one side, if somebody knows or somebody got to know about my background, they would form a notion that he or she is privileged and he or she is elite, and he has got here because of that privilege. So that was always something against me. So I had to always do more to show the same result and to get the same acknowledgement versus others. On the other hand, the other end was also that, you had a lot of people believing that, you are capable of a lot more than what I actually was. Again, because of the legacy. So it's a double-edged sword that I battled for the last 25, 26 years that I've been working, and in school, so, my school friends, when they used to play a prank, they used to get scolded. But when I used to play the prank, the principal used to call me, you're Lal Bahadur Shastri's grandson. You must behave yourself. So there was always this pressure. And, so when I got into, I was at LSE here to do my master's. And, when I came back and I went and started working for Vodafone, some of those friends asked me, oh, you must know so-and-so, and that's how you got in. But no, it was on effort, on capability, and on hard work that I did. And I remember when I went back to India, though born and brought up in Delhi, I did not at that point in time understand any Punjabi. So, and I was posted in the interiors of Punjab, in a place called Khanna. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Khanna, Nawashahar. I was in that area. And my boss was in that category who used to believe that I've been born in privilege and therefore I am clueless and I'm good for nothing. So, so I used to go out in the market without knowing a word of Punjabi. And if you go into interiors of Punjab, most people would only speak in Punjabi. So it used to be a big challenge for me. And I still remember, in all innocence, some 25 years back, my boss asked me in a review meeting that, how's it going? And I told him everything's fine. But sir, when I go and take a cycle rickshaw to go in the market, the cycle rickshaw guys always start fighting with me. So he said, why is that? So I mean, this conversation is happening in Hindi, oblique Punjabi, but I'm telling it to you in English. So he said, why is that? So I said, well, whenever I take a cycle rickshaw anywhere and I give him $10, and sometimes they're happy and sometimes they start really fighting with me and saying, this is not right. So he said, what do you do? So I told him that when I get off, I ask him how much, in Punjabi, kitna hua, in Hindi, kitna hua. And typically the cycle rickshaw guy replies, "Tusi das do." And I, being such a fool, did not understand that "Tusi das do" means you answer. You tell me how much are you willing to pay. And I used to understand and think "Tusi das do" means give 10 rupees. Tum 10 rupees de do. And that I told this to my boss, and in front of the entire group of us, he publicly humiliated me and said that you're good for nothing. And he is not saying that you give 10 rupees, but he's asking you to say how much are you willing to pay. So that was early on one of my learnings, and I realized that I must overcome this challenge. And then, therefore, of course, I started learning a bit of Punjabi. And the end result was that, by the end of 2 years' time, I was, one of the star sales performers for the state of Punjab, for the company, for Vodafone. So anyway, things like those. So those kind of challenges I've been through from the start. And then, of course, in this journey of my corporate life, with Samsung or with Apple later on. We overcame challenges all through, Samsung, the Koreans, their concept of ethics and their concept of governance from an Indian perspective is a little different, So there is a lot of protocol. There is a lot of, subservience to your boss. And it's very difficult to speak up against or, different viewpoint against your boss. And I learned that, while I was in Samsung, that in the Indian context, they would actually take affront to the fact that if you question your boss's judgment or so on. But then, we had to make those choices, and we had to stand up for ourselves and the company's business in India, because we explained to them, to the Koreans, that if you want to do business in India, you have to do it in the sense of ethics and governance that exist in India. So for example, in the Korean way, openly complimenting or openly acknowledging and openly gifting partners was very accepted. But in the Indian context, you don't do that. It could be considered as bribe. So we had great difficulty in making, the Koreans understand those kind of challenges. And I still remember the chairman of Samsung, J.Y. Lee, came to India, and Samsung had its factory in Noida, in Uttar Pradesh, and they wanted to expand that factory and wanted more land. And the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh at that time was Mayawati. And I took the managing director of Samsung to Lucknow to meet Mayawati. And he said, "Why should I meet? Let us just, give what she's asking for." So I said, "Well, that's not the way it works. We have to follow the process, and we have to make sure that we do not move into any gray area." And he told me that, "Well, the image that this chief minister has." So I told him, "Well, Mr. Lee, I know the image that the chief minister has, good or bad, or what people say is not something we do. But in the future of Samsung's business in India, if you get tainted, then there is absolutely no way that you will be able to recover from that in the next 10 years' time." So he tried to understand, he tried to agree, and I made him agree to this, and then we went to meet the chief minister. And of course, her way of meeting was very different, and J.Y. Lee was extremely worked up, because we went to meet the chief minister, and there was a hall of this size, and there was one chair in that entire hall on which the chief minister was sitting, and there were no other chairs in that entire hall. And some of our MLAs and ministers were sitting on the floor, on the carpet. So, we said, so J.Y. Lee looked at me and said, "What should we do?" I said, "Well, we can't sit on the carpet. You're the owner of Samsung. And I also will not sit on the carpet." So he said, "Okay, so let's stand." So we were standing. And then, the OSD to the chief minister came with a large bouquet of roses. And the chairman, J.Y. Lee, was very excited. He said, "Thank you so much for the bouquet." And then the OSD told J.Y. Lee that, no, sir, this bouquet is not to welcome you. You have to give this to the chief minister. So, those are the kind of intricacies, you have to deal with in the Indian context, in different cultures and so on. So, So, but eventually we got land, and of course, Samsung's largest manufacturing facility in the world outside of China is now in India. So, those kind of things happened. Then, of course, similarly with Apple, we used to face multiple challenges, and getting an American system into the country, and those were exciting times, and we were able to do that. Apple's way of working is also very different, extremely ethical. I remember when I was joining them as a country head for India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Nepal, they had a 65-page document, which was an ethics document which you had to sign, a governance document to do this, not do this, so on and so forth. So in that sense, I realized looking at Apple that they really have evolved governance into a level where they will not budge, even if a shortcut is the easier way, or paying a bribe is an easier way. And they really had those, concepts of governance inbuilt into the system with checks and balances. Apple probably was one of the few companies at that time which had a very, very strong whistleblower policy. And I still remember that in the European market, a very senior person was asked to go because of some issues between that gentleman and his clients or customers in Northern Africa. So those got exposed through whistleblowers. So so those kind of ethics, governance is what we saw in Apple. And then of course after that I quit Apple and I said I must work more in the social sector, and there's this legacy that I must look at. And we built these business schools across India, in Delhi, Indore, Allahabad, Bareilly, Hyderabad. And we also run schools in rural India, in Uttar Pradesh. We have over 16,000 children studying in schools there. We have a primary school just for girls, which has about 5,500 girls. And in our business schools, we have about 4,000 kids. And in 1995, when we founded the business schools, we were the first, and you would have all heard of the Indian Institutes of Management, IIMs. We were the first business school in India to have a compulsory credit paper on ethics. And we believe that because we have the DNA of Shastriji, and Shastriji's values have stood the test of time across the world and in India. And we introduced this paper. And at that point in time, the UGC, the University Grants Commission, when we spoke to the chairman, he said, well, there is no need. And we said that, no, this is something we must do, because young managers, when they pass out and go into the corporate sector, they must understand the values and ethics and the aspects of governance, which will ensure that they build organizations in the right manner. And of course, after that, we have multiple credit papers for the students. Because Shastriji believed that most of India also lives in the villages, and we felt that no corporate individual, no businessman can ever understand India truly if he or she doesn't have exposure to rural India. We were the first to include a rural immersion program for our students. It's compulsory for every student in all our business schools to spend 1 month every year in rural India. And they have to live on their own. They have to go to the village. They have to talk to the village heads to understand. The objective is to understand how does public policy, how do benefits flow down from the top right down to the last level of governance, and therefore understand the leaks in the system and how they can be plugged, and so on and so forth. So we do a lot of work around that area to ensure that that young people, wherever they go and work in the world, and we have a lot of business students, business school students who are qualified company secretaries, chartered accountants, and they all come back to us and say that you have helped us provide a new perspective to how we need to work. And with that perspective, we keep making sure that students do that. Shastriji, in his own way, of course, Abhijit ji gave an example of Shastriji's, straightforwardness when he resigned as railway minister. But I'll just, because we are here and, you have, really no choice but to listen to me before you get lunch. So I must give you one or two ways, simple examples of how Shastriji used to ensure and how he used to make sure his values go across. So this is one story. When he became prime minister, his children, my father and his brothers, they went to him one night late in the evening, after he came back from work. And they said that, well, we want to talk to you. And he said, what do you want to talk to me about? It's 1:00 at night. He said, well, when we go to school, we feel very embarrassed because you're Prime Minister of India, and in your office, the officers who work under you, their children go to the same school as we. And they all come in official cars and big cars. But we, being, the children of the Prime Minister, we go to school in a tonga. A tonga is a horse carriage. They used to go in a horse carriage, and Shastriji heard them and thought about it and came back to them and said, okay, fine. If that is what you want, you can start going in my official car. And he called his secretary in the morning next day and said, well, the children want to go to school in my car, and whatever is the amount of money, the petrol which is used, please deduct it from my salary. So the children were very happy, and they said, well, now we can go back, we can go to school in the car. But while his children were leaving, he called them back and told them that, but you must know one thing, that if I am Prime Minister today, I may not be Prime Minister tomorrow. I may, given my resignation or for whatever reason, I may not be. Then please remember, then this official car is not going to be there. And then you'll have to go back to going to school in a horse-drawn carriage. So my father and his brothers all had a quick conference among themselves and came back and said that actually we're happy to go in a horse carriage only. We don't want to go in the car. So he asked them, Shastri asked him why. Asked them why. Said, well, to go from a horse carriage to a car and then come back to going in a horse carriage will be even more embarrassing. And it might as well continue going in a horse carriage itself. So, simple ways how he used to make sure that the values are understood, across his children and across the country, and when we had this war with Pakistan, then, India was not self-sufficient in food at that time. This is 1965. And, he said that we must, fast for a day and try and build more self-reliance. And of course, he laid the seeds of the Green Revolution and the Milk Revolution, which is Amul that we all know of. But before he appeals to the people of the country to fast for one day, he first made everybody in the family do it. And when they were able to do it for a month, for 4 Mondays, it's then that he appealed to the people. And it is an honor for me when I go anywhere in the country today, I still meet restaurant owners, I still meet dhaba owners in the cities and villages of India, and people of that generation who come and tell me that, when Shastriji made this appeal to the country, we used to shut our restaurants and we used to shut our dhabas on Monday evening. And that was the power of commitment. That was the power of, intellectual honesty, that when he could do the same with his family, it is only then that he appealed to the country, and the country followed. And of course, we know about his history that the country then became self-sufficient in wheat over a period of time. So there are many such examples. He used to talk about ethics and the governance. So in terms of administration and governance, we inherited the civil services from the time of the British. And he was the first to realize that it needs to be more sensitive to people. Earlier it was a different generation, different time, when they did not need to be sensitive to the people as long as it was under the colonial rule. But when India became independent, he realized they need to be sensitive, and he formed the first Administrative Reforms Commission. As Prime Minister, when protests used to break across India, he stopped the use of rubber bullets. He said they could hurt people. So he started using water cannons. So you see on television now that everybody is protesting and there's water cannon. You must give that credit to Shastriji. He said the rubber bullets are also painful. So let it be water cannons. So on. And so there are a lot of things that, at that point in time, happened, which were, of course, result of his vision. So a lot of work, like I said, we do in this area. And I'm just talking about these things just to give perspective about how I think it all boils down to the ethics and the value systems that we build. And I think as leaders in your own respective fields, it's absolutely critical that we build a value system and a moral compass which we can follow and which we can stay true to. Because if we are able to do that, then we stay true not just to our own selves and to our own integrity, but to all of those people and to our country, where, who built this country where we are today. And of course, I would also like to say that, here in the UK, in India, India looks at UK and UK looks at India in a completely new light, I think, in the last 10 years. And a lot of that credit goes to, people like yourselves who made sure that India has this profile that you cannot ignore India now. And I think in that sense, if I would be excused by all our British friends here, is some sort of reverse colonization that I like to think of it as, where, you walk into any restaurant. I was at an Indian restaurant yesterday having dinner, and 85% people having dinner there were not Indians. So I was really happy. I said, this is fantastic. And this is where I think India's come back. And of course, whether we talk about industry, we talk about finance, across the board, I think India is a partner that the United Kingdom looks to. And I think clearly the shared history, the shared culture, the shared DNA over the last 250 years certainly builds towards that. But now India is also at a space where it is not just looked upon as a historically poor country, but as a country which stands on its own in the Committee of Nations as one of the leading countries in the world. And today we have the wherewithal and the weight on the globe to be able to say and speak what we want to do. So I think that's clearly there for us. I will not take much more of your time. I would just like to end, conclude. I'll give you one little story about, because a lot of people when I meet, they ask me what made you move from Apple into social work. And I give them this little example of this school that we run in 60 kilometers away from a city called Allahabad. And it's a primary school. We have children from KG to class 4 in that particular school. And I went to that school sometime in 2013-14. And we used to have 50% students attending. And, I asked the principal that why is it that we don't have more students coming? And his answer was, well, the students work in the farms. The kids work in the farms, and the parents, the farmers, don't let them come to school because they feel an extra hand is going to be helpful. And, so I said, let's start giving them food. And that will ensure that people do come in. And I went back after a few months and I asked the principal again. And he told me, well, we have over 90%, 95% attendance in the schools now. So I was very happy. And I said that that's great work now. And, we have more kids coming to school because we are able to give them one full meal a day. And I asked him, but still, why is it that 5-7% people are not coming? And he said, well, they don't come because their parents, the farmers, cannot afford the tuition fees for the children. And I asked him out of curiosity, how much tuition fees do we charge in our school? And they said, we charge £1 a month, 100 rupees a month. And that's when I realized that in our country, in India, there are parents who are unable to send their children to school because they cannot afford 100 rupees a month. And we do not even think twice before, maybe offering an ice cream to our child for over 100 rupees, who would probably just have a bite and maybe doesn't like it and throw it in the garbage. So I think that's the sense and realization that we all need to have. And I always conclude, because I'm always want to remind everybody of the words of arguably the greatest Indian of the 20th century, Gandhiji, Mahatma Gandhi. And he used to say that our work remains undone until we're able to wipe every tear from every eye. So I think that, ladies and gentlemen, is something we should all yearn to do in our lives, in our family, in society, and for the country. Thank you once again for having me. Thank you.